Peace, everybody. I'm conducting this video in response to a video I saw last night. I just wanted to, for some reason, watch this interview from President Vladimir Putin of Russia before his meeting with Joe Biden. I think this interview happened 2 weeks ago. And in a 18-minute mark, after the interviewee asked a series of ridiculous questions to Putin as far as like, do you have a soul? Are you a killer? No, are you interfering in our elections? Are you financing cyber attacks? And Putin just mentioned, we've been accused of a lot of things, He said, I was surprised that you haven't accused us of starting the Black Lives Matter movement, the BLM movement. So Putin just somehow interjected Black America into the conversation. The most powerful world leader in the world, due to the fact that the Russian army, the Russian military, has an ability to annihilate any country in the world with this hypersonic missile technology. The most powerful person in the world just somehow interjected Black people into this conversation. Out of all of the people in the world, he just wanted to talk about Black people, right? And then he said something very strange. He say the Black Lives Matter movement was used to elect Joe Biden, basically. It was a tool. And also he said he's not really supporting of that movement because they're too extreme. But if you really read between the lines, he's telling us that Black Lives Matter movement was started for an agenda. It's not really for Black people, really. Then he said something else about the reason he's supporting Black people, the struggle, is because we have a rooted history, a deeply rooted history. And the interviewer didn't even ask him, what rooted history, what are you talking about? And he just left it at that. You see what I'm saying? Like, what is this rooted history that we have with Russia, the Black American people? And why are they so interested in the Black people in America? Out of all of the people in the world, he didn't mention Africans. He didn't mention, who else did he mention? He didn't mention Europe. Like when he talk in relation to Europe, he talk as though Europe is a whole separate continent. Like Russia is not even part of Europe, according to him. But you don't really see too many world leaders mentioning Black people in this perspective. As far as like, basically, he's saying they're our allies. Whatever happened to them happened to us. Like, this is very powerful. And after this comment was made, you saw Joe Biden pandering to the Black community, signing the Juneteenth. That was passed mysteriously within the last 2 weeks. Even though Trump introduced it last year, now all of a sudden, since Putin said that he's with the Black people's struggle, they want to pander to the Black community. And then they just recently named Lakeshore Drive in Chicago after John Baptiste Pont de Sabo. Well, let me play this interview so you can see what I'm talking about, and I'm gonna come back to it with some more comments.
Which I believe is what has been done in the United States in the last few years, where the US-Russia relationship was sacrificed for the sake of a fierce political strife inside the US. We can see that. We know it well. We have been accused of all kinds of things: election interference, cyber attacks, and so on and so forth. And not one time did they bother to produce any kind of evidence or proof, just unfounded accusations. I'm surprised that we have not yet been accused of provoking the Black Lives Matter movement. That would have been a good line of attack.
What do you think?
We did not do that.
What do you think of the Black Lives Matter movement?
I think that, of course, This movement was used by one of the political forces domestically in the course of election campaigns. But there are some grounds for it. Let's remember Colin Powell, who was Secretary of State, and he was also in charge of the Pentagon. Even he wrote in his book that even he, as a high-ranking official, had felt some kind of injustice towards himself his entire life, as someone with a dark complexion. Even from the USSR days and in Russia, we have always treated with understanding the fight of African Americans for their rights. And there are certain roots to it. There is a certain foundation for this. But no matter how noble the goals that somebody is driven by, if it reaches certain extremes, if it spills over into...
Now, what is he talking about? There is a certain foundation to it, certain roots to it. Because he mentioned history with the USSR. If I could find that, in the 1930s, after the Harlem Renaissance or during the Harlem Renaissance, a lot of black poets and intellectuals went to the USSR, encouraged by Vladimir Lenin. So it's something else he said in this interview. I might not be able to get to it, but he said in the 1930s, the United States adopted the policy in which people who dealt in foreign matters were excluded from that or thrown in prison to prevent like so-called foreign interference, which was parallel to a lot of black people in America going to the USSR to do their movies, to perform their music, to culturally exchange, and also to experience some type of freedom. But it's interesting that he mentioned all of these facts in his one interview. He's really communicating with the black American people in this interview. And I'm surprised that, these so-called black YouTubers or the black media haven't really picked up on this and let people know that there's a extremely powerful country who is speaking on so-called black people's behalf when they don't really have to. Really basically saying, don't mess with them. Don't mess with them. See what I'm saying? Let me finish this a little bit.
So extremism acquires elements of extremism. We cannot approve this.
With Fundrise, you can
I ain't trying to
invest
watch this crap. What is this?
from there or
Trying to
there.
watch that. Forget that.
We cannot welcome this.
He basically saying Black Lives Matter are extremists. Hold on, what I just do?
Whereby
You just say they're extremists because Black Lives Matter, they promote a homosexual agenda. They promote, what you call it? Their agenda. Hold on.
even made a decision to pay the ransom. They paid off
Hold on.
sexual reform. Will you be happy about it? This is a conversation that has no subject. Dear Kir, you have said that there is a weight of evidence of cyber attacks by Russia.
Hold on, I messed up.
Attacks and deny any involvement by Russia. But Mr. President, there is now a weight of evidence.
Hold on, I gotta find it.
Is that what you did?
Well, I'm giving you information about who said it, so you can answer.
Sexual reform. Will you be happy about it? This of U.S. Special Services powerful risk. This is an empty conversation, a pointless conversation. What exactly are we talking about? Interesting, but it didn't come to the point of actual negotiation.
Well, I kind of lost it, but I got to the point in which so-called Putin interjected the so-called Black Lives Matter movement into this conversation. And also he mentioned something that's very interesting as far as their rooted history, their foundational history which he did. He mentioned the USSR, which we all know in the 1930s, that so-called black people was accepted in the USSR. Let me find that real quick. But he said something even before that. We have a foundational rooted history. Hold on. Let me type this in. USSR. Langston Hughes visits Soviets. Hold on, let me do that. Hold on. Langston Hughes visits the Soviet Union in 1932-1933. In June of 1932, poet Langston Hughes, political activist Louise Thompson, and 22 other African Americans, artists, filmmakers, and actors traveled to the Soviet Union to create a film about African American life in the American South. This film, aptly titled Black and White, was the focus on the many examples of racial discrimination experienced by blacks in the region, as well as to counter the many black stereotypes plaguing the film industry at the time. So they had to go to the USSR to get this appreciation. Who is this guy right here? Out there on the right, A Negro Looks at Soviet Central Asia by Langston Hughes. But yeah, this is the history that they don't really talk about. But Vladimir Putin said that there's a history that's foundational, that's rooted. He used initially he used the word that's coined by Tariq Nasheed. He called us foundational black Americans. But you saw that Putin actually said we have a rooted, he used the word roots, roots allegedly was about the slaves from Africa, right? So Putin used roots and he used foundational in relation to the Russian history. This is something that we have to get to the bottom to. We got to get to the bottom to this. Hughes tours South Central Asia, commenting on the similarities in this region to the American South, as both were major producers of cotton. In his 1934 book, A Negro Looks at Soviet Central Asia, Hughes wrote in the autumn, if you step off the train almost anywhere in the fertile parts of Central Asia, he wrote, you step into a cotton field or into a city or a town whose streets are filled with evidence of cotton nearby. The native calls it white gold. On all the dusty roads, camels, carts, and trucks loaded with the soft fiber go towards the gins and warehouses, I guess the cotton gins, outside the towns. Oftentimes, as far as the eye can see, the white balls lift their precious heads. So they had cotton picking in Central Asia, just like they had it in the South. But this is right here. The black people was going to the Soviet Union in the 1930s. And I think the United States government passed the law to prevent that. And he actually, if you watch the whole Putin interview, he actually mentioned that. And it's something else he mentioned that I think was really funny. Because the interviewer always cut him off when he actually talked about the American hypocrisy. He say, don't be mad at the mirror if you're ugly. Don't be angry at the mirror if you ugly. You don't want to hear about the evil, ugly things that you doing, but you want to always point the finger at what I'm doing, and what you're doing is a lot worse. I just want to talk about it briefly. I'm gonna put the link into the description as far as I'm gonna put a link into the description as far as the video, the interview with Putin, and his comments on Black America. I kind of messed up the timeline, so I ain't trying to waste time trying to find the exact, you can find it. But I played the information I wanted to play when he mentioned that there's a rooted foundational history between Russia and the black people in America. And another part I didn't play, which it was going to get played, how he said he's and the Russian people are supportive of the struggle for equality of the black people in America. That was also said, but I kind of didn't get it. But that's about it. You know, I'm gonna leave the link, so if you want to watch the interview, you could do that. All right.